Let me tell you something. Right now. There is nothing, and I mean nothing on this cursed earth that compares to the perfect, gentle sway of a lime green, flamingo pink, hand-painted, slightly too squeaky porch swing on a Tuesday afternoon. I had just managed to get the precise amount of sun on my left foot. The iced tea condensation was forming that perfect little ring on the wood, and the book I was pretending to read was heavy enough to justify the nap I was about to take. This was it. My suburban nirvana. A monument to low-effort relaxation that was, frankly, a massive middle finger to the rest of Pomegranate Heights, where every single home was painted one of 4 shades of beige. Bone, ecru, sand dune, or my personal favorite, regret. My swing, however, was painted a color palette that screamed, "I live here, and I own a hot dog stand on the side." It was loud, it was joyous, it was, if I'm being honest, demonstrably tacky. But it was my tacky. I'd sourced it from an estate sale 3 towns over, wrestled it into the back of my small sedan, and spent a weekend painting it with the conviction of a Renaissance master gone slightly colorblind. It wasn't just furniture. It was a statement. A bright, swinging beacon of defiance against the tyranny of the Homeowners Association, or the HOA, which in Pomegranate Heights stands for Hello Organized Objection. I was mid-sigh of contentment when I heard the dreaded sound. The crisp, rhythmic tap-tap-tap of expensive heels on my perfectly mediocre asphalt driveway. "Oh, for crying out loud," I mumbled into my chest. "Doesn't she have a hedge to trim or a soul to crush?" The tapping belonged, of course, to Mrs. Henderson. Rhonda. She was the vice president of architectural integrity, and a woman whose own house was so relentlessly minimalist it looked like a PowerPoint slide left deliberately blank. She dressed in power suits the color of charcoal dust and carried her clipboard everywhere like it was the holy grail of conformity. She stopped right at the edge of my lawn, refusing to step onto my slightly too long Bermuda grass. Her gaze landed on the glorious lime green structure, and her face went through 3 distinct phases: confusion, pity, and finally the steely determination of a woman about to cite a federal crime. I gave her a lazy wave. "Afternoon, Rhonda. Lovely day for beige, wouldn't you say?" She ignored my jab. Her eyes were fixed on the pink piping I'd added to the edge of the swing seat. "Mr. Finch," she started, her voice a precise, chilled soprano, like a broken glass flute. She didn't even use my first name, Leo. It was always Mr. Finch. It felt like I was being scolded by a substitute teacher I hadn't seen since 1998. "Rhonda," I corrected mildly, taking a long, exaggerated sip of my tea. "Mr. Finch," she repeated, refusing to break eye contact. "I trust you received the correspondence regarding your exterior seating arrangement." She emphasized the last 3 words like they were Latin for plague-bearing eyesore. I reached into the pocket of my shorts and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. The HOA violation notice, Section 3, Subsection G, external furnishings must maintain tonal integrity with the surrounding landscape. I held it up. "Ah, yes, the love letter. It's truly moving. We are very serious about maintaining property values in Pomegranate Heights," she continued, adjusting her charcoal suit jacket. "The aesthetics guidelines clearly prioritize subtle elegance. We've had 3 complaints already this week. The color saturation alone." She trailed off, apparently lacking the vocabulary to describe such a crime against decorum. I stopped swinging, I leaned forward, my internal sarcasm detector reaching critical mass. And what exactly is the issue, Rhonda? It's a swing! It's on my porch! She took a deep breath, clutching the clipboard. This was the money shot, the moment of pure, devastating suburban shaming. The issue, Mr. Finch, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as if revealing a dark secret, is that the swing is, unfortunately, demonstrably tacky. Tacky. The word hung in the humid air, heavier than the 2 gallons of iced tea I had consumed. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it, but hearing it from Rhonda, from the embodiment of every stifled joy and muted color in this damn town, it hit different. It felt personal. It felt like a challenge. It felt like an invitation to an all-out, no-holds-barred suburban warfare. I slowly stood up, placing the tea glass gently on the swing seat. I stared past her, out at the perfectly manicured, utterly boring expanse of my front lawn. The lawn that was only ever used for mowing and judging. Tacky, I repeated, tasting the word. You know, Rhonda, I always strive for accuracy in my aesthetic choices. She tilted her head, clearly thinking she had won. Then you'll remove it. I looked at the porch swing, then at the empty, silent space of the lawn. No, Rhonda, I said, pulling out my phone. My thumb hovered over the search bar. I think you just set the bar too low. You want subtle elegance? Oh, honey, you haven't seen Tacky. This isn't even my final form. My internal monologue was already screaming, Tacky? You think a porch swing is tacky? Fine. If you want something that truly violates every single one of your precious architectural integrity covenants, you're going to get it. I typed furiously into my browser. Used Scrambler Ride for Sale, USA. The decision was made instantly and irrevocably, a sudden, glorious burst of pure, unadulterated lime green spite. I slammed the HOA letter down on the swing. Prepare for subtle carnage, Rhonda. The next 72 hours of my life were dedicated to a singular, all-consuming mission, procuring and installing a commercial-grade amusement park ride in my front yard. It turned out that buying a decommissioned Carnival ride is the easy part. Amazon doesn't stock them, but there's a whole greasy underworld of heavy machinery liquidation. I settled on a 16-arm octopus ride. It was slightly older, loud, neon-painted, score, and advertised with the delightfully unsettling promise, minor hydraulic seepage, runs hot, requires 480V minimum. Perfect. The real comedy began when I tried to find someone to install this beast. My first call went to a highly rated local general contractor named Build It Right, Inc. I needed to maintain an air of professional detachment, so I cleared my throat and adopted my most authoritative voice. Yes, hello. My name is Leo Finch, and I'm undertaking a significant landscape architecture project. I require heavy equipment installation services. A guy named Doug answered. He sounded like a man who dealt exclusively with crown molding and granite countertops. Sure thing, Mr. Finch. What are we putting in? Water feature? Outdoor kitchen? We're excellent with retaining walls. It's a kinetic sculpture, I said, trying to sound artistic. A kinetic sculpture. Sounds fancy. How heavy are we talking? Say 500 pounds? I paused, calculating the weight of the octopus ride, which the seller had estimated at around 6 tons minimum. Closer to 12,000 pounds, Doug. It's a very articulated kinetic sculpture. It requires a 480-volt hookup, and maybe, just maybe, a foundation rated for dynamic lateral forces. Dead silence. Then a squeak. Sir? We put in decks and sunrooms. We don't do centrifugal motion platforms. Are you sure you don't mean a gazebo? A gazebo, Doug, implies stillness. This project is all about motion, specifically rapidly rotating, multi-directional motion. I think you need a crane, Mr. Finch, and maybe a psychiatrist. We're going to pass on this one. Good luck with your sculpture. Click. Next, I called a heavy equipment operator. These guys moved silos and bridge parts. They would understand. Yeah, we move stuff, the operator grunted. What's the cargo? A large industrial-scale spinning ride, I said. We need it centered on a 2-foot concrete slab, 3 feet deep. It's going right where the rose bushes used to be. Is this a commercial job? Like a county fair? No, private residence. Front yard. Another pause. Longer this time. Let me repeat that. You want us to crane a 20-foot-tall carnival ride into your suburban front yard. That is correct. I can pay extra for the discreet nighttime drop-off. Buddy, there is nothing discreet about moving a multi-ton octopus ride. And if we drop it, your insurance is going to ask some very pointed questions about why your lawn ornament requires more engineering than my entire house. We're out. The rejection was demoralizing, but also hilarious. These people had no vision. They were slaves to convention. I realized I needed a different breed of contractor. I needed someone who operated outside the bounds of conventional sanity. I needed Crazy Kenny. I found Kenny through a deeply recessed forum dedicated to decommissioned amusement parks, wedged between a post about rusty tilt-a-whirl parts and an argument over proper brake caliper grease. Kenny didn't have a website. He had a Hotmail address and a phone number that looked like it belonged to a burner phone. When he picked up, he sounded like a man currently losing a fight with a chain smoker and a broken engine. Yellow? Who is this? If this is about the busted generator, I told you I'm good for it. Just gotta flip this kiddie coaster first. Kenny, my name is Leo Finch. I'm calling about your transport and installation services. Yeah, I move metal. What kind of metal? Big metal or small metal? Very big metal. It's an octopus ride. Ooh, the old school ones. Hydraulic? Those run hot. Good torque, though. Where's it going? Pomegranate Heights, suburban neighborhood, front lawn? Silence. But this time it wasn't confusion. It was interest. A neighborhood, huh? Not a fairground? Not a pumpkin patch? Nope. Residential. Corner lot. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, along with the sound of a nearby sputtering engine. Look, buddy, I got a tilt-a-whirl bolted to my flatbed right now. You got a slab of concrete and a fat check? I don't ask questions. You don't call the fire marshal. That's the Kenny way. That was the magic phrase. I don't ask questions. Kenny, I said, a grin spreading across my face. You and I are going to be great friends. I have the cash, and I have a yard full of dead rose bushes that are just begging for a Class 4 counterweight system. The negotiation was surreal. It wasn't about cost so much as logistics and liability. We agreed on an astronomical price, all in cash, and a highly specific timeline. Midnight, 3 days from now. Kenny's only condition was that I had to secure the 480-volt power hookup myself. I ain't electrocuting myself on some subdivision's power grid, pal, he wheezed. That part's on you. Done, I said. I had absolutely no idea how to secure 480-volt power, but that was a problem for future Leo. The next 3 days were a blur of nervous excitement and highly suspicious activity. I dug a 3-foot-deep, 10 by 10-foot hole in the center of my lawn, claiming I was building a storm cellar art project. I bought enough quick-rete to build a small bunker. The neighbors watched in silent horror, their curtains twitching like nervous butterflies. Then came the night. I was sitting in my living room, the lights off, watching the Great British Bake Off, a necessary calm before the storm, when my whole house rattled. It wasn't a gentle rumble. It was the sound of 1,000 bad decisions rolling down Main Street. I rushed outside. Looming over my street, blocking both lanes and scraping the delicate arch of the Pomegranate Heights entryway sign, was a semi-truck carrying the largest, rustiest, most magnificent pile of rotating metal I had ever seen, the octopus ride. It was glorious and absolutely terrifying. The truck driver, a man named Chet, who looked like he'd been awake for 3 consecutive weeks, leaned out the window, chewing on a toothpick with palpable aggression. "Finch!" he yelled, his voice echoing off the beige houses. "That's me!" I hissed, gesturing wildly for him to lower his voice. He spat the toothpick out. "You're the nut job with the yard ride?" "It's a kinetic sculpture, Chet. Please maintain professional decorum." "Buddy, this thing has dried Carnival popcorn glued to the seats. It smells like a mixture of diesel and regret. This ain't sculpture." He then opened the manifest clipboard, shining a flashlight on it. "All right, signature right here. Confirming delivery of 1-1. Multi-arm rotating thrill ride, decommissioned, functional status questionable." I signed the paper with a flourish. Yes, this is definitely the delivery address for the large, stationary, non-residential amusement device. Everything looks to be in order. Good, because I'm getting out of here before the sun comes up, and I have to explain to a cop why I imported a public hazard into a private cul-de-sac. Chet drove the semi-truck right onto my lawn, tearing deep ruts into the grass. A future HOA violation, I noted happily. Crazy Kenny, who had somehow arrived 10 minutes earlier in a pickup truck that looked like it was held together with duct tape and positive thinking, started barking orders. "All right, Finch, get the chains on the boom. We gotta lift the main carriage assembly. And for the love of God, keep that lady in the window from calling the police. She's got the shade of 1,000 beige suns in her eyes." I looked over. Sure enough, Rhonda Henderson was standing behind her sheer curtains, silhouetted against her pristine, monochromatic living room, holding a phone pressed to her ear like a life raft. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with exhilaration. The war was officially underway, and the first shot was the clanking, squealing sound of a 12-ton octopus ride being lowered onto my newly poured concrete slab. Kenny's final words before the crane started groaning were a perfect summation of the next phase. "Keep your eyes on the neighbors, kid. You're about to make history. Or go to jail. Could be either one." I watched the main pillar settle with a final, echoing thud. It was huge. It was hideous. It was perfect. Tacky? Rhonda hadn't even met Tacky yet. The installation of a decommissioned amusement park ride is not a subtle process. It's an exercise in pure, unadulterated auditory assault. It was less a construction project and more an illegal dawn-to-dusk concert starring heavy machinery and Crazy Kenny's endless supply of profane, gravel-throated commentary. The following morning, a beautiful, quiet Saturday in Pomegranate Heights, was violently interrupted by the screech of metal on metal, the incessant beep, beep, beep of Kenny's beat-up yellow forklift, and the rhythmic, skull-splitting thwack of an oversized sledgehammer against a rusty bolt. Leo's internal monologue was a constant stream of justifying the glorious cacophony. "Every swing of that hammer is a nail in the coffin of conformity. That screech? That's the sound of property values attempting to escape." I tried to keep things low-key, but Kenny's methodology was fundamentally opposed to low-key. He was operating on pure adrenaline and expired coffee. "Finch, get me the 4-inch bolts, not the 2-inch. The 4! We ain't mounting a birdhouse here, we're building a temple to velocity," Kenny yelled, his voice already strained by 9 a.m. He was wearing a tank top despite the crisp morning, covered in grease, and looked generally ecstatic. The octopus ride was slowly taking shape. Its main pillar, a hideous shade of sun-faded teal, was bolted to the new slab. The 8 arms, each ending in a brightly colored fiberglass pod, red, yellow, orange, the colors of a radioactive sunset, were being hoisted and attached. The neighbors, bless their beige-loving hearts, were losing their minds. They didn't just twitch the curtains anymore. They were actually standing in their driveways, arms crossed, their silence louder than Kenny's welding torch. Around 10 a.m., I got my first official in-person confrontation from someone who wasn't Rhonda. Mr. Johnson, 3 houses down, a man whose entire personality revolved around his zero-turn riding mower, approached me. "Leo," he started, barely controlling his rage. "What in God's name is that noise? I can't hear my financial news podcast. And look at my prize-winning fescue." He gestured dramatically at a tiny patch of brown grass where Kenny had dropped a wrench. "Morning, Bob. Lovely day for kinetic sculpture assembly, right?" I replied cheerfully, handing a bottle of water to Kenny, who was wrestling a hydraulic line. "It's not a sculpture, Leo. It's an eyesore. It's blocking the view of my prize-winning petunias." "Ah, but Bob, that's where you're wrong," I countered, pulling out a laminated diagram I had quickly printed off the internet. "See this here? This is the central axis. We're installing a high-intensity passive energy capture system. The aesthetic choice is merely a side effect of its highly efficient design." Bob squinted at the diagram, which was clearly labeled Octopus Ride, 1987 model. "That's a picture of children screaming." "That's a diagram of sonic vibrational output," I insisted. "It's scientific. Look, Kenny needs me to find the centrifugal brake fluid, so if you'll excuse me, I'm dealing with hydraulic systems rated for 15,000 hours of continuous operation." Bob retreated, defeated, but only temporarily. He muttered something about calling the city, and I just waved him off. The complaints were stacking up like badly built Jenga towers. The inevitable, the ultimate, the Rhonda arrived at 1 p.m., armed with her clipboard and an entourage of 2 other identically dressed, equally stressed out committee members. Her face was the color of a freshly painted garage door, pale and tight. She marched right up to the newly erected fence I'd hastily put up, a requirement for construction sites, according to Crazy Kenny, and began listing violations like a seasoned auctioneer. "Mr. Finch, this violates subsections 3.A, 7.C, and 12B of the Architectural Integrity Covenant. We have a signed declaration from 1998 explicitly prohibiting structures that exceed the height of the primary dwelling unit and anything defined as a public or private nuisance under the municipal code." "Rhonda, I respect the covenants," I said, wiping a bit of grease on my shorts. "But 2 things. First, the ride is currently considered mobile equipment until the final concrete curing. Second, my roofline is actually higher than this, but I'm willing to buy you a tape measure if you'd like to verify." My house was a 2-story box. The octopus ride was 25 feet tall. Rhonda's nostrils flared. "And the noise, it's deafening. We're getting reports of severe emotional distress." "That's just the sound of progress, Rhonda," Kenny chimed in, dragging a massive wrench. "We're torquing the main pivot assembly. Gotta be tight. You don't want these arms flying off and taking out a few beige mailboxes now, do you?" Kenny's casual threat sent the other 2 committee members scurrying back to the safety of their SUVs. Rhonda, however, stood her ground. "I am calling the city, Mr. Finch. This is beyond the scope of a simple violation. This is a potential felony, You are operating an unlicensed, uninsured public hazard in a family-oriented zoning district. Is it an accessory dwelling unit? No, I replied, holding up my fingers. Is it obstructing pedestrian traffic? Only if they insist on walking through the rotating claw. I checked the definitions, Rhonda. I'm building a large-scale, non-habitable, articulated recreational structure on my property. Show me the specific covenant against that. Rhonda sputtered, clutching her binder. The entire spirit of the neighborhood is against this. The spirit of the neighborhood, I retorted, is what forced me to paint my swing lime green in the first place. You broke the spirit, Rhonda. I'm just giving it a 25-foot hydraulic memorial. Sure enough, around 4 p.m., a shiny sedan pulled up, marked Pomegranate City Zoning and Planning. Out stepped a man in a pale blue shirt, a tie loosened at the collar, and a face that screamed, I graduated with a liberal arts degree, and this is my punishment. His name tag read, Gary. Gary was clearly having the worst Saturday of his life. He approached the fence cautiously, looking up at the towering teal and neon structure with a deep existential weariness. Kenny, who had paused his welding, gave Gary a friendly, grease-stained wave. Mr. Finch, Gary asked, holding up a stack of complaint forms thicker than a brick. I am Gary from zoning. I have received 15 calls about a personal centrifuge, a mechanical kraken, and an audio-visual nuisance. Can you just tell me, what is this legally? I put on my most charming, reasonable guy persona. Gary, thank you for coming out. I understand the confusion. This is a heavy-duty articulated lawn ornament. Gary slowly massaged his temples. Sir, lawn ornaments do not require a 6-ton central support structure or a dedicated 480-volt electrical transformer, which I see you are currently wiring up. Ah, the transformer, I exclaimed, pointing. That's for the optional high-wattage security lighting. Crime's up, Gary. A man needs to secure his property, and I think it's technically a heavy-duty articulated lawn ornament under Section 4 of the Municipal Code, provided the rotational function is deemed non-commercial. Gary opened his binder, flipping through pages, his eyes darting between the fine print and the massive metal arms looming over him. Section 4Q governs garden gnomes and flagpoles, sir, not amusement park hardware. But is it explicitly excluded, Gary? Show me the text that says, no octopus rides on private property. He couldn't. The code, bless its simple heart, had never envisioned this scenario. We spent 20 minutes going over the definition of appurtenance, accessory structure, and aesthetic detraction. I argued that the ride was performance art, showcasing the ephemeral nature of rigid suburban conformity. It's a metaphor, Gary, I insisted. It spins, demonstrating the endless cycle of suburban judgment. It's meant to provoke conversation. It's provoking panic, Mr. Finch. I can literally smell the grease from here. That's just the anti-seize lubricant, Gary. It's a necessary maintenance step. Eventually, Gary gave up. He was a zoning inspector, not a philosopher or a mechanical engineer. He was defeated by the absurdity of the situation. He sighed, rubbed his eyes, and started backing away slowly, like a man escaping a cult meeting. I don't know what this is, Mr. Finch, he finally admitted, his voice cracking slightly. But I have to consult with the city attorney. I'm going to file a provisional stop work order based on public safety, but I promise you, I'll be back, and I won't be alone. I watched him go, feeling a rush of triumph. I had bought myself at least 24 hours. The ride, for all its terrifying size, was now structurally sound. The wiring was almost done, thanks to Kenny's shockingly efficient, and probably highly illegal, hookup straight off my main utility line. Kenny, we have less than a day. I need this thing spinning by sunset tomorrow, I shouted over the welding torch. Kenny grinned, his eyes sparkling with manic glee. You got it, kid. Let's fire up this beautiful tacky monster. The construction continued, faster now, fueled by the imminent threat of official closure. The sun set on my front yard, illuminating the half-assembled octopus ride in the harsh, naked glare of a temporary floodlight. It was beautiful. It was awful. And it was almost ready to rock. Sunday evening, the hour of reckoning. The octopus ride, now fully assembled and wired, stood sentinel over my street. Crazy Kenny had spent the morning cleaning it with a garden hose, which mostly just served to spread the grease around. The fiberglass pods were shiny. The neon paint job looked freshly offensive under the fading sunlight, and the whole structure hummed with barely contained hydraulic potential. The entire neighborhood was out, not in the friendly block party way, but in the mass casualty event way. People were standing on their porches, leaning on their mailboxes, holding their kids close, all staring at the monstrosity in my yard. I put on a leather jacket, which I felt was appropriate for the inauguration of a criminal enterprise. Kenny, wiping his hands on a rag, gave me the thumbs up. She's hot, Leo. Real hot. Don't run her past 3 minutes or you'll burn out the main pump. But she'll move, kid. Oh, she'll move. I climbed into the central control booth, a small, grimy panel that smelled faintly of old cotton candy and regret. I took a deep breath. Tacky, huh? Try facing 4 Gs of pure spite, Rhonda. This is the sound of victory. I flipped the master power switch. A low, industrial hum vibrated through the ground. Then, I tentatively pushed the engage motion lever. The sound that followed was not a smooth, engineered whir. It was a groan, a shriek, a metallic cry of protest that immediately drowned out every ambient noise in Pomegranate Heights. The 8 arms lurched, then began to rotate slowly around the central axis. Give her gas, Leo! The neighbors love the sound of raw, unadulterated power, Kenny yelled gleefully. I pushed the throttle forward. The rotation sped up. The neon lights, red, yellow, orange, flickered, then roared to life, casting garish, unsettling shadows across the beige houses. The cars on the ends of the arms began to spin on their own axes, a dizzying, terrifying combination of centrifugal and rotational force. I was riding it alone, and it was glorious. The octopus ride was a 25-foot-tall, 3-ton middle finger to the HOA. I felt the G-forces press me into the fiberglass seat. I laughed, a maniacal, purely joyous sound that was swallowed by the machine's roar. I completed 2 full minutes of terror-induced ecstasy. I was high above the rooftops, looking down at the horrified faces of my neighbors. Rhonda was standing on her porch, holding her phone in a death grip, undoubtedly delivering an emotional distress report to the police dispatcher. As a final act of showmanship, I spotted a young boy, maybe 10 years old, named Timmy, peeking out from behind a bush. Timmy was always the only kid who appreciated my lime green. Swing. I braked the ride with a hydraulic hiss. Timmy! I shouted, pointing to a free pod. You want to embrace the tacky? Get in here! Timmy didn't hesitate. He dashed across the lawn, hopped into a yellow pod, and I threw the throttle again. His scream of sheer, unbridled joy was the sweetest sound I'd heard all year. It was a non-profit community outreach program, as I had previously stated. Timmy got 2 full cycles of life-altering centrifugal force before the siren cut through the air. Not just 1 siren, 2. Whoop, whoop, whoop! Blue and red lights turned the neon spectacle of the octopus ride into a visual war zone. 2 patrol cars skidded to a stop right in front of my driveway, their tires hissing on the asphalt. I slowly brought the ride to a stop. The machine groaned its final protest. I helped a slightly dizzy, completely overjoyed Timmy out of the pod. "Go home, Timmy," I whispered. "Tell your friends you experienced true freedom." Timmy, eyes wide, nodded. "It was better than Disney," he breathed, and then sprinted away. 2 officers got out. The first, a stern, imposing woman named Officer Rodriguez, walked right up to the still idling machine. The second, a young, nervous-looking guy, stayed closer to the car. "Sir," Officer Rodriguez said, her voice hard and low, "we are shutting this down immediately. You are in violation of public nuisance, noise ordinance, and possibly operating a commercial enterprise without a license." I hopped down from the control booth, adopting my most innocent, slightly bewildered expression. "Officer, with all due respect, I'm just conducting essential maintenance on a large-scale, non-habitable, articulated recreational structure." "It's an amusement park ride, sir. We received 47 separate calls, including a report that your rotating steel arms might take out a small plane." "A slight exaggeration, I assure you," I said calmly. "And commercial? Officer, I'm giving rides away for free. It's a non-profit community outreach program. I'm doing more for community spirit than the entire HOA combined." Officer Rodriguez placed her hands on her hips. "You need to show me the specific permit authorizing the installation and operation of a heavy mechanical device on a residential property, Mr. Finch." "Permit?" I tried to look surprised. "I applied for a permit for a lawn ornament. The city zoning office confirmed they had no specific exclusion for kinetic sculptures of this size. I have the paperwork right here." I pulled out Gary's initial, vague, defeated assessment form. "This is a zoning form, sir, not an operating permit." "But it clearly shows the city was aware of my project," I argued, tapping the paper. "And it never explicitly said no. My lawyer, who I may or may not have on speed dial, will argue that in the absence of explicit prohibition, a homeowner is entitled to install any structure that does not pose an immediate risk to life or limb." Kenny, who had been quietly coiling a hydraulic line, piped up. "She's safe, officer. We bolted the arms with grade 8 fasteners. It's solid, unlike, say, a shed built by a suburban dad on a Saturday afternoon. Now that's a hazard." Officer Rodriguez ignored Kenny, focusing her laser glare on me. "This structure is 25 feet tall, spins at 20 miles per hour, and is currently drawing enough power to run a small hospital. I need a common-sense justification for this enormous machine taking up half of your front yard." "Common sense is subjective, officer," I replied, feeling the thrill of the debate. This was the moment for pure linguistic acrobatics. My common sense dictates that a man who has been called Tacky should embrace that title with appropriate scale. This is not just a ride, it is a metaphorical device designed to challenge rigid suburban aesthetics. I pointed dramatically to the silent, neon-painted machine. "You see the beige houses, officer? They represent conformity. This ride, this beautiful, grotesque machine, represents the chaos and beauty of individual expression. It is protected speech, officer." She looked at me like I was speaking ancient Aramaic. "It's a noise violation, Mr. Finch, and a clear public safety issue. I need you to power down the whole unit, or we will have to call a tow truck and confiscate it." "A tow truck?" I gasped dramatically. "Officer, the structural integrity. You can't just tow a permanent fixture kinetic structure. It's bolted to a dedicated concrete slab. It's designed to withstand centrifugal force, not the lateral stress of a municipal tow truck. That would create a real public hazard." The conversation devolved into a hilarious philosophical debate about what truly constitutes a permanent fixture versus lawn furniture versus temporary art installation. I managed to delay the inevitable by demanding to see the specific code violation for personal use, hydraulic-powered, multi-arm rotating thrill ride. "I don't need a specific code," Officer Rodriguez finally yelled, exasperated. "I need a reason why this isn't illegal." "Because it's awesome, officer, and awesome shouldn't be illegal," I countered, throwing my hands up. "The city code is silent on awesome structures. Therefore, it is permitted." My argument, while glorious, was ultimately pointless. Officer Rodriguez, done with my semantic nonsense, pulled a sheet of paper from her patrol car. "Mr. Finch, I am issuing a cease and desist order based on immediate danger and noise violation. The ride must be powered down, secured, and rendered inoperable within 1 hour. Failure to comply will result in impoundment and fines of $10,000 a day." She signed it with a flourish. She then looked at Kenny, who was whistling nonchalantly. "You, sir, you assisted in the installation of an illegal structure. I'm going to need to see your commercial license and your permits to operate heavy equipment in this county." Kenny immediately dropped his rag. "My license is currently in the mail, officer, and my permits are, filed in a jurisdiction that no longer exists." He then turned to me, giving me a salute. "Good run, kid. I'll call you from the station. Tell him I'm good for it." Kenny was hauled away, and the octopus ride was silenced. Officer Rodriguez stood watch while I reluctantly threw the master breaker, plunging the gaudy neon arms into darkness. The air was thick with the smell of hydraulic fluid and quiet suburban resentment. I sat down on the newly poured concrete slab, defeated but not broken. The massive, silent, neon-painted structure stood like a mocking monument to my defiance. Officer Rodriguez gave me one last stern look before getting back in her car. "I suggest you start arranging for its removal, Mr. Finch." Final internal monologue for the section. They got me. The system won. Now what am I going to do with a fully functioning, silent, 3-ton, neon-painted monument to suburban warfare? I can't leave it here. But I sure as hell can't dismantle it. The octopus ride sat in my front yard like a colossal, brightly colored dinosaur skeleton. Silent. Mocking. It was, however, still technically on my property, and the cease and desist only forbade its operation. Removal, Officer Rodriguez had suggested, was the logical next step. Logical. That word, I've found, is the enemy of all great ideas. I spent the next morning bailing out crazy Kenny and meeting with the lawyer I'd mentioned, a friend from college named Sasha. Sasha specialized in tax evasion, but found the concept of weaponized tackiness irresistible. We met at a diner. I laid out the situation. Rhonda called my porch swing tacky. I installed a 25-foot octopus ride. Cops shut it down. I need a way to keep the structure without operating it as a thrill ride. Sasha took a bite of her bacon, eggs, and toast, chewing thoughtfully. Okay. So the city code violation isn't for the structure's existence. It's for its function as an amusement device. We need to change the function. How do you change the function of a hydraulic carnival ride? We don't. We change its classification. What else does the city code hate besides fun? We spent an hour poring over the zoning and planning sections. They had strict rules about sheds, pools, fences, and satellite dishes. Then, Sasha hit gold. Aha! Section 14D, Non-Aesthetic Essential Utility Structures. This covers radio antennae, public cell boosters, and water storage systems exceeding 100 gallons. She grinned, a predatory, beautiful grin. Leo, my friend, the octopus ride is illegal if it's considered an amusement device, but it's perfectly legal if it is a water storage facility and a broadcasting antenna support structure that just happens to have seats attached. I stared at her. So, we turn the octopus into a utility tower? Exactly. We replace the motor with a small satellite dish. We mount a 100-gallon plastic drum of rainwater on the central axis, and we bolt every single arm permanently into place. It's no longer mobile. It becomes a multi-purpose utility tower. The beauty of the loophole was breathtaking. It maintained the sheer, offensive size of the structure while neutering its illegal function. I hired Crazy Kenny again, this time to perform the de-amusement conversion. He charged double, of course. The conversion was almost as loud as the construction. The arms were permanently welded into a rigid, non-rotating configuration. The main hydraulic pump was disconnected and replaced with a bulky, bright blue rain barrel. A small, ugly satellite dish was affixed to the top of the central column. The octopus ride was no longer a ride. It was a 25-foot-tall, teal and neon-colored fixed-position rainwater collection and satellite broadcast system. It was hideous. It was immobile. It was, by God, legal. The city inspector, Gary, came out for the final review. He stood there, staring up at the monstrosity, his face completely devoid of emotion. "It is bolted down," Gary stated flatly. "Permanently affixed and non-rotating, Gary. Note the grade 8 structural bolts," I confirmed. "The hydraulic system is disconnected, and the central pump area is now occupied by a 100-gallon water storage container. Essential utility, Gary, for garden irrigation." He looked at the small satellite dish on top. "And that is a communications antenna." "It is. It brings me all the essential weather reports." Gary signed the paperwork. "The structure is now in compliance with Section 14D, Non-Aesthetic Essential Utility Structures. The cease and desist order is lifted." He put his pen away, giving me a long, defeated look. "I hate my job, Mr. Finch." "I know, Gary. Have a great day." My final interaction with Rhonda was a week later. She approached me, clipboard back in hand, but the steely determination was replaced with the haunted look of a woman who had seen the face of chaos and lost. "Mr. Finch, that thing is still in your yard. It's blocking the sun from the Johnsons' new rhododendrons." "Ah, but Rhonda," I said, putting my arm around the silent, newly painted beige support leg of the structure. I painted only the base beige, just to mock her. "It's not a ride anymore. It's a multi-purpose utility tower. Here's the city certification." She glanced at the document, her jaw slackening. "But it's still tacky." I gave her my best, most condescending smile. "I know, Rhonda, I know. And you know what? It's the only 25-foot-tall, non-aesthetic, essential community utility in Pomegranate Heights. And to top it off, I got permission to repaint my porch swing. Look." I pointed to my porch. The swing was back. It was not lime green and flamingo pink. It was now a retina-searing fluorescent orange and electric blue. It complies with the color palette since it is now classified as residential exterior, recreation furnishing, which has no color restrictions. And you know what, Rhonda? It's tacky. She had no reply. She simply turned and walked away, the last vestiges of her architectural integrity crumbling behind her. I won, not by being elegant, but by being relentlessly, creatively tacky. I sat back down on my newly radioactive orange and blue porch swing, watching the sun set behind my enormous, silent, legal but illegal Carnival ride structure. It was the ultimate victory over conformity. The octopus ride, now a utility tower, stood as a monument to the ridiculousness of overzealous neighborhood committees. They said my swing was tacky. They were wrong. It was subtle. But now the tacky starts at 30 feet and ends with a satellite signal and a rain barrel. The phone rang. It was Crazy Kenny. "Hey, Leo, got a guy who wants a roller coaster in his backyard. Said his wife called his birdbath pedestrian. You want to help me rig the electrical?" I took a long, contented sip of my iced tea. You know what, Kenny? I think I'm just getting started. The hilarious lesson learned. Sometimes, to win the small battles of life, you just have to escalate them to industrial-grade absurdity. And honestly, it's the most engaging conversation starter this street has ever had. The perfect, gentle sway of my incredibly tacky porch swing resumed. All was well in Pomegranate Heights.